Hey everyone, hope you're having a great day. You're listening to the RX Daily Dose. Today's episode is being recorded for Tuesday, September 8th, and I'm your host, Ian Parnagoni. We update this podcast for healthcare providers, medical professionals, and anyone who has an interest in drug updates. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms and social media, including iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and Instagram. All links can be found in the show notes below. I hope everyone had a great Labor Day weekend, socially distanced and masked up, of course, because we're all responsible adults. But we do have updates for you to discuss today. In today's episode, we're going to talk about the approval of Enspryng, a new product for treatment of NMOSD in adults, and approval of Onureg, a new treatment for acute myeloid leukemia. We'll also talk about approval of Winlevi, a new treatment for acne, and approval of Sogroya for adults with growth hormone deficiency. As always, feel free to skip around. I'm going to include times in the show notes so you can get the drugs that interest you. First up, the FDA approved satralizumab, which goes by brand name Enspryng, for the treatment of neuromyelitis optica spectrum disorder, known as NMOSD, in adults with a particular antibody, those patients who are anti-aquaporin 4 or AQP4 antibody positive. NMOSD is a rare autoimmune disease of the central nervous system that mainly affects the optic nerves and spinal cord. Enspryng is the third approved treatment for the disorder. Both Soliris and Uplizna were both approved for the disorder within the past year, and even with those products on the market, over 40% of NMOSD patients remain untreated. In patients with NMOSD, the body's immune system mistakenly attacks healthy cells and proteins in the body, most often those in the optic nerves and spinal cord. Individuals with NMOSD typically have attacks of optic neuritis, which causes eye pain and vision loss. Approximately 50% of patients with NMOSD have permanent visual impairment and paralysis caused by NMOSD attacks. Estimates vary, but NMOSD is thought to impact approximately 4,000 to 8,000 Americans. NMOSD can be associated with antibodies that bind to a protein called aquaporin 4. Binding of the anti-AQP4 antibody appears to activate other components of the immune system, causing inflammation and damage to the central nervous system. The effectiveness and safety of Enspryng for the treatment of NMOSD was demonstrated in two 96-week clinical studies. The first study included 95 adult patients. 64 of these patients had antibodies against AQP4. During this study, treatment with Enspryng reduced the number of NMOSD relapses by 74% in patients who were anti-AQP4 positive compared to treatment with placebo. The second study included 76 adult patients. 52 of these patients were anti-AQP4 positive. During the second study, treatment with Enspryng reduced the number of relapses in patients who were anti-AQP4 positive by 78% compared to treatment with placebo. There was no evidence of a benefit in patients who were anti-AQP4 antibody negative in either trial. The prescribing information for Enspryng includes a warning for increased risk of infection, including serious and potentially fatal infections such as potential reactivation of hepatitis B and tuberculosis. Other warnings and precautions for Enspryng include elevated liver enzymes, decreased neutrophil counts, and hypersensitivity reactions. The most common side effects observed were the common cold, headache, upper respiratory tract infection, inflammation of the lining of the stomach, rash, joint pain, fatigue, and nausea. Vaccination with live attenuated or live vaccines is not recommended during treatment and should be administered at least 4 weeks before starting Enspryng. Enspryng received Fast Track designation, which expedites the development and review of drugs that are intended to treat a serious condition and demonstrate the potential to address an unmet medical need. The drug also received Orphan Drug designation, which provides incentives to assist and encourage drug development for rare diseases. The FDA is granting the approval to Genentech Incorporated. The FDA also approved azacitidine tablets, which goes by brand name Onureg, for continued treatment of patients with acute myeloid leukemia who achieved first complete remission or complete remission with incomplete blood count recovery following intensive induction chemotherapy and are not able to complete intensive curative therapy. Acute myeloid leukemia starts in the bone marrow, but most often it quickly moves into the blood as well. It can sometimes spread to other parts of the body, including the lymph nodes, liver, spleen, and central nervous system, including the brain and spinal cord. Most often, AML develops from cells that would turn into white blood cells, and sometimes AML develops in other types of blood-forming cells. There are multiple different types of AML, and it goes by many other names, including acute myelocytic leukemia, acute myelogenous leukemia, acute granulocytic leukemia, and acute non-lymphocytic leukemia. Efficacy was investigated in Quasar, a multi-center randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trial. 472 patients who achieved complete remission or complete remission with incomplete blood count recovery with intensive induction chemotherapy, with or without receiving subsequent consolidation therapy, were randomized 1-to-1 to receive Onureg 300 mg or placebo orally on days 1 to 14 of each 28-day cycle. The main efficacy outcome measure was overall survival. Median overall survival was 24.7 months in the Onureg arm and 14.8 months in the placebo arm. A subgroup analysis showed consistency in the overall survival benefit for patients in either complete remission or complete remission with incomplete blood count recovery. Adverse reactions in patients receiving Onureg were nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, fatigue, constipation, abdominal pain, decreased appetite, febrile neutropenia, dizziness, and pain in extremities. The recommended Onureg dose is 300 mg orally once daily, with or without food on days 1 through 14 of each 28-day cycle. The FDA also approved Calciterone Cream, which goes by brand name Winlevi. This will be the first new novel acne treatment to hit the market in decades. The product is set for use in people 12 years and older, and will compete against several other acne medications including retinoids and antibiotics. The drug is expected to launch in 2021, and Cassiopeia, the manufacturer, is hoping that dermatologists will be using this product in combination with other acne medications. Acne affects around 50 million people in the US, but there hasn't been a new mechanism of action in the field in nearly 40 years. Winlevi will be administered twice daily and will target androgen hormones within the sebaceous glands and hair follicles. And finally this week, the FDA approved somapacitan, which goes by brand name Sogroya, for adults with growth hormone deficiency. Sogroya is the first human growth hormone therapy that adult patients only take once a week by injection under the skin. Other FDA-approved HGH formulations for adults with growth hormone deficiency must be administered daily. There are other long-acting agents that are expected to get approved in 2021, including Tanscon HGH and Legova. It's important to note as well that Sogroya is not indicated for pediatric use, where the majority of growth hormone utilization is seen. Growth hormone deficiency is a disorder categorized by inadequate growth hormone production from the anterior pituitary gland, a small gland located at the base of the brain that produces several different types of hormones. Adult patients with growth hormone deficiency can receive growth hormone as a replacement therapy. It's estimated that more than 50,000 adults in the U.S. have growth hormone deficiency, with about 6,000 new patients diagnosed each year. Sogroya was evaluated in a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial in 300 patients with growth hormone deficiency who had never received growth hormone treatment or had stopped treatment with other growth hormone formulations at least 3 months before the study. Patients were randomly assigned to receive injections of weekly Sogroya, weekly placebo, or daily somatropin, which is an FDA-approved growth hormone. The effectiveness of Sogroya was determined by the percentage change in truncal fat, the fat that is accumulated in the trunk or central area of the body that is regulated by growth hormone and can be associated with serious medical issues. At the end of the 34-week treatment period, truncal fat decreased by 1.06% on average among patients taking weekly Sogroya, while it increased among patients taking the placebo by 0.47%. In the daily somatropin group, truncal fat decreased by 2.23%. Patients in the weekly Sogroya and daily somatropin groups had similar improvements in other clinical endpoints. The most common side effects of Sogroya include joint pain, sleep disorder, vomiting, hypertension, weight increase, and anemia. Sogroya should not be administered in patients with a history of hypersensitivity to the drug. Sogroya should also not be used in patients with acute malignancy, any stage of diabetic eye disease in which high blood sugar levels cause damage to blood vessels in the retina, acute critical illness, or those with acute respiratory failure, because of the increased risk of mortality with use of pharmacologic doses of Sogroya in critically ill patients without growth hormone deficiency. Healthcare providers should perform an eye examination before starting Sogroya and periodically thereafter to exclude pre-existing papilledema, a condition in which there is swelling in the optic nerve at the back of the eye. Papilledema may be a symptom of intracranial hypertension. Growth hormones may induce or worsen pre-existing intracranial hypertension. The FDA granted the approval to Novo Nordisk. And that's all I have for right now. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll include all links in the show notes below, so please go back and check those out too. Please connect with me on any of your social media platforms and give me feedback on what you heard today. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. And as always, feel free to like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.